I still remember that night 26 years ago. The velvet box pressed against my thigh in my pocket as I turned the key to our apartment. Something felt off immediately. Then I heard them, my brother Jake and Natalie, my fiancée of 3 years. I stood frozen, the diamond ring burning a hole through my pants while my future crumbled before my eyes. Now my daughter Hannah wants us all to reconnect because we are still family. How do you forgive someone who stole your future while you were planning to build it? Let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to know whether blood really is thicker than betrayal. Growing up, Jake and I shared everything. Our childhood home in suburban California had been filled with laughter, backyard adventures, and the typical brotherly bond. We built tree forts in summer, sledded down hills in winter, and protected each other from neighborhood bullies. Our parents always commented on how fortunate they were to have sons who got along so well. But as we entered our teenage years, things began to change. Jake, being 2 years older, developed a competitive streak that went beyond normal sibling rivalry. What started as innocent competition over grades and sports achievements gradually morphed into something more troubling. Jake began dating girls I mentioned liking first. He would borrow my things without asking and sometimes return them damaged. When I got my first car at 16, a used Ford that I had saved for by mowing lawns, Jake seemed to drive it more than I did. Despite these issues, I still looked up to him. I rationalized his behavior as normal big brother stuff. Our parents noticed the tension but dismissed it as growing pains. I remember my dad saying brothers fight, but blood always runs thicker. I would learn how hollow that sentiment could be. After high school, I chose to attend State University, while Jake went to a technical college across town. The distance helped our relationship, and by my sophomore year we had fallen into a comfortable rhythm of occasional dinners and holiday gatherings. I began to think we had outgrown our competitive phase. Then I met Natalie in my junior year. She was a transfer student in my economics class, with bright green eyes and a laugh that made everyone around her smile. The first time I saw her, she was arguing passionately with our professor about wealth distribution models. Her intelligence and confidence captivated me immediately. It took me 3 weeks to work up the courage to ask her for coffee. To my surprise, she said yes. That coffee date turned into dinner, which turned into a movie night, which turned into 3 years of building what I thought was an unshakable relationship. Natalie brought stability and joy into my life. She was ambitious, pursuing a career in corporate law, but also deeply caring. She volunteered at an animal shelter every weekend and always remembered birthdays and anniversaries. I watched her charm my parents at family dinners and even win over my hard-to-please grandmother during holiday gatherings. And then there was Jake. When I first introduced them at a family barbecue, I noticed how his eyes lingered on her a bit too long, but Natalie seemed uninterested in him, politely engaging in conversation before returning to my side. I dismissed my concerns as paranoia born from our childhood rivalry. As our relationship progressed, Natalie became integrated into every aspect of my life. We moved into an apartment together after graduation. We adopted a rescue dog named Cooper. We talked about future plans, careers, and eventually children. By our 3rd anniversary, I knew without doubt she was the woman I wanted to spend my life with. Planning the proposal became my secret project. I worked extra shifts at the marketing firm, where I had landed an entry-level position after college. Every additional dollar went into a savings account dedicated to purchasing the perfect ring. I researched diamond cuts and settings during lunch breaks and asked her friends subtle questions about her jewelry preferences. 6 months of saving and planning led to a 2-carat diamond set in white gold. The ring cost nearly 3 months of my salary, but seeing it nestled in its velvet box made every overtime hour worth it. I scheduled a reservation at Bella Notte, the Italian restaurant where we had celebrated our 1st anniversary. The owner, an elderly Italian man named Giovanni, agreed to bring the ring out with dessert. In a moment of brotherly affection and excitement, I showed Jake the ring 2 weeks before the planned proposal. We had met for drinks, and our relationship had improved enough that I wanted to share this milestone with him. "She is going to flip out, little brother," Jake said, examining the ring under the bar lights. "Natalie is a lucky woman. I am the lucky one," I replied carefully, returning the ring to my pocket. Jake raised his glass in a toast. to my brother finally becoming a man. We laughed, drank, and for the first time in years I felt truly close to my brother again. I even asked if he would consider being my best man at the wedding. His eyes widened briefly before he nodded and clasped my shoulder. "Nothing would make me prouder," he said. The proposal was scheduled for Friday night. I had arranged to leave work early to prepare. Natalie thought I would be working late, setting up the element of surprise. I had asked her to meet me at the restaurant at 7:30, telling her it was a work dinner she could join. But that morning my boss assigned me an urgent project that required immediate attention. My heart sank as he explained the client needed the materials by 5. I called the restaurant to push our reservation back an hour and texted Natalie that dinner plans were still on but delayed. By some miracle, I finished the project by 4 and decided to head home to shower and change before going to the restaurant. Natalie would still be at her law firm, usually working until at least 6. I could get ready in peace and still make it to the restaurant before her to ensure everything was perfect. I entered our apartment building, feeling lighter than air. The ring box sat in my jacket pocket, and my mind raced with visions of our future together. I imagined telling our children about this day, about how nervous their father had been before asking their mother to marry him. The first sign something was wrong came when I unlocked our door and heard music playing softly from our bedroom. Natalie must have come home early too, I thought. Then I noticed an unfamiliar jacket thrown over our couch. A male jacket. My stomach tightened as I moved toward the bedroom, telling myself there must be a reasonable explanation. The bedroom door was partially open. Through the gap, I could see 2 figures entangled on our bed. The bed we had purchased together 6 months earlier. For a split second, my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. Then reality came crashing down, as I recognized Jake, my brother, my would-be best man, with his hands all over my girlfriend. I pushed the door open fully. The hinges creaked, causing them both to freeze and look up. The shock on their faces might have been comical in any other situation. Natalie clutched the sheet to her chest, her mouth forming a perfect O of surprise. Jake scrambled backward, nearly falling off the bed. "Cal," Natalie gasped. "You were supposed to be at work." Those words, so mundane and yet so damning, broke the spell of shock that had held me immobile in the doorway. The implication was clear. This was not a first-time occurrence. This was not a mistake. This was something they had been doing perhaps for weeks or months, carefully planned around my work schedule. How long, I asked, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. Jake stood up, pulling on his jeans. "Cal, this is not what it looks like. It looks exactly like my brother sleeping with my girlfriend," I replied, my voice eerily calm, despite the hurricane raging inside me. Natalie began crying, tears streaming down her face as she clutched the sheet tighter. "It just happened, Cal. We never meant to hurt you." "How long?" I repeated louder this time. Jake and Natalie exchanged a glance that told me everything I needed to know. The silent communication between lovers who share secrets. 3 months, Jake finally admitted. "But it is just physical. It does not mean anything." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the velvet box. Without a word, I placed it on the dresser by the door and turned to leave. "Cal, wait." Natalie called after me, her voice breaking. "We can talk about this, please." I stopped at the door but did not turn around. "I have a dinner reservation at Bella Notte at 8:30. You two should go. It would be a shame to waste it." Then I walked out, closing the door quietly behind me. No shouting, no dramatic scene, just the soft click of a door, shutting on 3 years of what I now realized had been a lie. I spent that night in a hotel downtown, ignoring the continuous vibration of my phone as messages poured in. Jake called 17 times. Natalie sent 23 texts, each more desperate than the last. I read none of them, silenced my phone, and stared at the ceiling until dawn broke through the cheap curtains. By morning, I had made my decision. I could not stay in California, could not bear to see either of them again. I returned to our apartment when I knew Natalie would be at work, packed what I could fit into 2 suitcases, and left a note terminating our lease. I called my boss, explained I had a family emergency, and resigned effective immediately. 3 days later, I boarded a plane to New York with no job, no plan, and a heart so shattered I doubted it would ever be whole again. The first months in New York passed in a blur of cheap apartments, temporary jobs, and sleepless nights. I cut all contact with everyone from my previous life except my parents, who I called once a month with reassurances that I was fine. I did not mention Jake to them, and thankfully they seemed to understand that topic was off limits. 6 months into my self-imposed exile, I landed a position at a small marketing agency in Manhattan. The work was demanding and all-consuming, exactly what I needed to keep my mind occupied. My colleagues became my first new friends, though I kept them at a comfortable distance, never sharing details about my past. It was at a client meeting that I met Sarah. She worked for a publishing company that had hired our agency to rebrand their young adult division. During the presentation, she challenged nearly every aspect of our proposal, with intelligent questions and thoughtful criticisms. Where my colleagues saw a difficult client, I saw someone who cared deeply about her work. After the meeting, I found her waiting by the elevator. "Your team thinks I am a nightmare," she said without preamble. "They think you are thorough," I countered. She laughed, a genuine sound that made her brown eyes crinkle at the corners. "Would you like to discuss the proposal further over coffee?" "I have some additional thoughts." Coffee turned into dinner as we discovered shared passions for obscure films, hiking, and spicy food. For the first time since leaving California, I found myself laughing without restraint. Sarah was direct, intelligent, and refreshingly honest. She told me about her divorce 2 years prior, her Midwestern upbringing, and her dream of eventually starting her own publishing imprint. When she asked about my past, I gave her the simplified version. Relationship ended badly, needed a fresh start, moved across country. "There is more to that story," she observed, stirring her coffee. "There is," I admitted, "but I am not ready to tell it yet." She nodded, respecting my boundaries in a way that made something tight in my chest loosen slightly. "When you are ready, I will listen." We dated for 8 months before I finally told her the full story one night as we sat on her fire escape watching the city lights. I expected judgment or pity. Instead, she took my hand and thanked me for trusting her. "Your brother and your ex did not deserve you," she said simply. "Their actions reflect who they are, not who you are." With Sarah, I slowly rebuilt my capacity for trust. She never pushed when I needed space, never made me feel irrational when old insecurities surfaced. When I met her family and found myself overwhelmed by their boisterous welcome, she noticed my discomfort and created a quiet moment for just us, allowing me to decompress. 2 years after meeting, I proposed on the Brooklyn Bridge at sunrise. No fancy restaurant, no elaborate plan, just the two of us and the simple platinum band I knew she would prefer over anything flashy. "Are you sure?" she asked, after saying yes, her eyes searching mine for any hesitation. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life," I replied, and meant it. We married in a small ceremony, with only her family and a few close friends. My parents flew in from California but understood why I had not invited Jake. They mentioned he had been dating Natalie openly since my departure, a detail that stung less than I expected. The following year, Sarah gave birth to our daughter, Hannah. Holding that tiny bundle in the hospital, I made a silent promise to protect her from ever experiencing the kind of betrayal I had known. Hannah became the center of our universe, her milestones and achievements celebrated with a joy that helped heal old wounds. Through mutual friends who still kept in touch, I occasionally received updates about Jake and Natalie. They married 2 years after I left a lavish affair, according to the photos that circulated. Their marriage lasted 7 years before ending in divorce, apparently due to Jake's multiple infidelities. The news brought no satisfaction, only a weary confirmation of what I already knew about my brother's character. Jake attempted to contact me several times over the years, particularly after his divorce. Christmas cards, emails to my work address once, even a phone call to my parents' home when I was visiting. I declined all contact, not out of anger anymore, but from a place of self-preservation. I had built a new life, one free from the toxic dynamics of our relationship. In our home, Jake's name was rarely mentioned. When Hannah asked about my family as a child, I spoke warmly of my parents and briefly mentioned having a brother with whom I had lost touch. Sarah supported my decision to keep these details minimal, understanding the pain they carried. As Hannah grew into a teenager, her curiosity about our extended family increased. She questioned why her friends had cousins, aunts, and uncles, while she only had her maternal relatives. I deflected these inquiries with vague explanations about geographical distance and growing apart, never revealing the true nature of the estrangement. When Hannah was 16, she found a box of old photographs in our attic while searching for school project materials. Among them was a picture of Jake and me at my college graduation arms, thrown around each other's shoulders, smiling broadly. That night, she placed it on the dinner table and asked directly why we never spoke to my brother. Sometimes adult relationships are complicated, I explained carefully. Jake and I took different paths in life. Do you hate him? She pressed. No, I answered truthfully. I just realized we are better off living separate lives. Hannah seemed to accept this explanation, but I noticed her watching me with new eyes, as if trying to reconcile the father she knew with this person who had a past and relationships she knew nothing about. When Hannah turned 20 and was halfway through her sophomore year at Columbia, everything changed. She came home for spring break, unusually quiet and withdrawn. Sarah noticed it first, pointing out how Hannah seemed to be avoiding direct conversations with me specifically. 3 days into her visit, Hannah asked if we could talk privately. We sat in my home office, where she nervously twisted her fingers together before finally speaking. Dad, I found Uncle Jake on social media 6 months ago. The words hit me like a physical blow. Uncle Jake. She had given him that title, claimed that relationship without knowing anything about our history. I sent him a message. She continued, words tumbling out faster. Now, we have been talking. He told me everything about what happened with Natalie. He is really sorry, Dad. He has been trying to apologize to you for years. I struggled to keep my expression neutral as rage and betrayal warred within me. My daughter had gone behind my back to contact the one person who had destroyed my trust in family. What exactly did he tell you? I asked, my voice carefully controlled. That he made a terrible mistake when he was young and stupid, that he slept with your girlfriend and you caught them, that you left town without giving him a chance to make it right. Hannah leaned forward, earnest and pleading. He said it was the biggest regret of his life. I noticed what was missing from this sanitized version. No mention of the planned proposal. No acknowledgement of the 3-month affair. No recognition of the repeated betrayal of trust. Is that all he told you? Hannah nodded. He said you two were really close before that and he misses his brother. Dad, he cried when we video chatted. The manipulation was so transparent, it would have been laughable if it had not been working on my daughter. Jake had always been able to turn on the waterworks when it suited him. Hannah, there is a lot more to that story than Jake shared with you. Then tell me your side, she challenged. You have never talked about it. She was right. In my effort to shield her from the ugliness of that betrayal, I had created a vacuum that Jake had been all too happy to fill with his version of events. So I told her everything. About the proposal plans, about showing Jake the ring, about the 3-month affair they had carried on behind my back, about how they had married after I left, about Jake's subsequent infidelities that led to their divorce. Throughout my account, Hannah's expression shifted from defensive to horrified. Why would he lie about those details? She whispered when I finished. People often reshape the past to make themselves the hero of their own story. I replied gently. Jake has probably told that version so many times he might even believe it now. Hannah wiped tears from her cheeks. I am sorry I went behind your back. I just wanted to know my family. You know your family, I said firmly. Your mother and I are your family. Sarah's parents and siblings who love you are your family. Jake is a biological relation, nothing more. Hannah was quiet for a long moment before dropping her next bombshell. He wants to meet me, in person, and he wants you to come too. He said it is time for healing. My immediate instinct was absolute refusal. The audacity of Jake to use my daughter as a pawn to force a reconciliation made my blood boil. That is not going to happen, I stated. Hannah's expression hardened in a way I had rarely seen. I am 20 years old, Dad. I can make my own decisions about who I meet. Of course you can, I acknowledged. But I will not be part of it. He is still your brother, she insisted. And he is the only uncle I will ever have. Are you really going to make me choose between you two? I am not making you choose anything, I countered. I am simply choosing not to reopen a wound that took years to heal. Hannah stood abruptly. Well, I am going to meet him next weekend when he visits New York. It would mean a lot to me if you would come too, but I understand if you cannot. With that, she left the room, leaving me with the distinct feeling that my carefully constructed family life was about to be upended all over again. That night, Sarah and I talked for hours after Hannah went to bed. Unlike me, Sarah had maintained relationships with her ex-husband's family after their divorce, believing that clean breaks were rarely possible or desirable in family dynamics. Maybe it would give you closure, she suggested cautiously. 26 years is a long time to maintain such a complete separation. He used my daughter to try to force my hand, I pointed out. That does not seem like someone who has changed much. Sarah sighed. True, but Hannah is an adult now, and she is going to meet him with or without your blessing. If you are there, at least you can see who he has become and protect her from any manipulation. I knew Sarah was right. My options were to let Hannah meet Jake alone, where he could spin any narrative he wanted, or to accompany her and ensure she saw the real Jake, not the reformed uncle he was pretending to be. The next morning, I told Hannah I would join her for the meeting. The relief and joy on her face made it clear how important this was to her. We agreed to meet Jake at a restaurant near our home-neutral territory that would allow us to leave easily if things went poorly. The week leading up to the meeting was one of the most stressful I had experienced since leaving California. Old nightmares resurfaced dreams where I walked into rooms to find people I trusted betraying me. Sarah noticed the dark circles under my eyes, but said nothing, simply holding me closer at night. Saturday arrived with brutal swiftness. I dressed carefully, wanting to project strength and success rather than the anxiety churning in my stomach. Hannah bounced around the house with nervous energy, changing her outfit 3 times and checking her phone constantly for messages from Jake. As we drove to the restaurant, Hannah turned to me. Thank you for doing this, Dad. It means everything to me. Her sincerity made my chest ache. Just remember, people do not fundamentally change. They just get better at presenting themselves. That is a pretty cynical view, she replied. It is a realistic one, I corrected. Especially when it comes to Jake. The restaurant was upscale but not ostentatious, with private booths that would allow our conversation some privacy. We arrived 20 minutes early at my insistence. I wanted to choose our seats, to have that small advantage of seeing Jake enter rather than being seen first. At exactly noon, he walked through the door. 26 years had not been kind to Jake. His once athletic frame had thickened substantially around the middle. His hairline had receded dramatically, and what remained had gone completely gray. He spotted us immediately, a broad smile spreading across his face as he approached. Hannah, he exclaimed, opening his arms to my daughter, who rose to embrace him. I remained seated, unwilling to offer even that small gesture of welcome. When he turned to me, his smile dimmed slightly. Cal, you look good. City life must agree with you. Jake, I replied with a nod, not returning the compliment. We ordered drinks and appetizers, navigating the initial small talk with painful awkwardness. Jake asked Hannah about college, her major, her hobbies, playing the role of interested uncle to perfection. I watched silently, noting how he mirrored her body language, laughed at all her jokes, and generally employed the same charm that had once made him popular with everyone he met. Finally, once the appetizers were cleared and the main courses ordered, Jake cleared his throat and turned to me. I want to thank you for coming today, Cal. I know this cannot be easy for you. I am here for Hannah, I replied evenly. Not for you. Jake nodded, as if he had expected nothing less. I understand. But now that we are here, I hope you will listen to what I have to say. He launched into a clearly rehearsed speech about youthful mistakes, about how he had spent decades regretting his actions, about how families should ultimately forgive one another. Throughout his monologue, I noticed he referred to the incident as a mistake and a lapse in judgment, never once using the words affair or betrayal. "So what do you say, little brother?" he concluded. "Can we put the past behind us and be family again? For Hannah's sake, if nothing else." Hannah watched me expectantly, hope shining in her eyes. I took a measured sip of water, organizing my thoughts before responding. "Jake, you have just spent 10 minutes talking about yourself and your feelings. Not once did you acknowledge the actual damage you caused. Not once did you mention that you slept with Natalie for 3 months behind my back while I was planning to propose to her. Not once did you acknowledge that you married her yourself afterward." Jake's expression hardened slightly. I was trying to be considerate of Hannah's feelings by not going into sordid details. "No," I countered. "You were trying to minimize what you did to make your apology seem more reasonable. The sordid details, as you call them, are precisely what make your actions unforgivable." Hannah shifted uncomfortably beside me. "Dad, he is trying to apologize." "Is he?" I turned to her. "An apology requires full acknowledgement of the harm caused. What I am hearing is a man who wants absolution without accountability." Jake's carefully constructed facade of remorse cracked then. "For God's sake, Cal. It was 26 years ago. How long are you going to punish me for one mistake?" "It was not one mistake," I replied calmly. "It was hundreds of deliberate choices over 3 months. And I am not punishing you. I simply chose to build a life without you in it." "And how is that working out for you?" Jake snapped, his true colors beginning to show. "Living in the past, holding grudges. Does it make you feel righteous to cut off your only brother, to deprive your daughter of her uncle?" "I did not deprive Hannah of anything. You forfeited the right to be her uncle when you betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible." Jake leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You always were self-righteous. Maybe if you had paid more attention to Natalie instead of working all those extra hours, she would not have turned to me in the first place. And there it was. The blame shifting, the justification, the complete absence of true remorse." I saw Hannah's eyes widen at this revelation of his true character. "Thank you for confirming what I already knew," I said, standing up. "You have not changed at all." Jake realized his mistake too late. "Cal, wait. I did not mean that. It was a difficult time for everyone. Hannah, I am going to wait in the car," I told my daughter. "Take whatever time you need to finish your conversation with Jake." As I walked away, I heard Hannah say, "You really hurt him, did not you? And you are not even sorry." I sat in the car for 20 minutes before Hannah emerged from the restaurant. She slid into the passenger seat quietly, her earlier excitement completely deflated. "He tried to convince me you overreacted," she said after a while. "He said I should help him mend the relationship because you are too stubborn to let go of the past. And what do you think I asked? I think I finally understand why you never talked about him." She turned to me, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I am sorry, Dad. I should have trusted that you had good reasons." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You wanted to know your family. There is nothing wrong with that. But family is not just about blood, Hannah. It is about respect, trust, and mutual care." The 6 months following our meeting with Jake brought unexpected healing to our family. Hannah and I had several long conversations about trust, forgiveness, and the nature of family bonds. She admitted that her search for connection with Jake had partly stemmed from a romantic notion of extended family that television and Friends had instilled in her. "I always envied my friends with big family gatherings," she confessed during one of our talks. "I thought I was missing something essential." "Family is what we make it," I told her. "Some of the closest people in my life have no biological connection to me at all." Jake attempted to contact Hannah several more times, but after witnessing his true nature at the restaurant, she established firm boundaries. She responded politely but distantly to his messages, declining further in-person meetings. Eventually, his attempts tapered off. One evening, as Sarah, Hannah, and I sat around the dinner table during her winter break from college, Hannah brought up Jake again. "He sent me an email yesterday," she said, pushing food around her plate. He is moving to Chicago and wanted to see me before he goes. What did you tell him? Sarah asked. I wished him well, but said I was too busy with finals and holiday plans. Hannah looked up at me. Is that okay, Hannah? You are an adult. You get to decide who is in your life. I responded. You do not need my permission. She nodded thoughtfully. I know. But after seeing how he tried to manipulate the situation, I understand why you kept your distance all these years. It was not about holding a grudge. It was about protecting your peace. Her insight struck me deeply. She had articulated something I had felt but never fully expressed even to myself. My decision to cut Jake from my life had not been about punishment or inability to forgive. It had been about recognizing a toxic pattern and choosing not to participate in it any longer. Do you think people can ever truly change? Hannah asked, looking between Sarah and me. I believe people can grow and improve, Sarah offered. But core character traits tend to remain consistent unless someone does extraordinary work on themselves. And Jake never did that work, I added. He wanted forgiveness without earning it. As our conversation continued, I realized how much weight had lifted from my shoulders since confronting Jake. For years, I had carried the burden of our estrangement, wondering if I was being unreasonable or unforgiving. Now, having seen him again, having witnessed his unchanged nature, I felt validated in my decision and free from doubt. That night after Hannah had gone to bed, Sarah and I sat on our porch swing wrapped in blankets against the December chill. You seem lighter these days, she observed, resting her head on my shoulder. I am, I admitted. Seeing Jake again showed me I made the right choice all those years ago, and Hannah understanding that means everything. Family is what we create. Sarah murmured, echoing my words to Hannah. And we created something beautiful. Looking back on the 26-year journey, from that devastating night to the peace I now felt, I recognized the profound truth that had emerged from the pain. True family is built on trust, respect, and genuine love, not merely shared DNA. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, not an obligation you owe to others. And sometimes the healthiest response to betrayal is not reconciliation, but the creation of strong boundaries that protect what you value most. So, what about you? Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between maintaining a relationship with a toxic family member or protecting your peace? Do you believe blood relation obligates us to forgive actions we would never accept from others? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to define family on their own terms. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the family that matters most is the one that treats you with love and respect.